Thank you so much for coming back. I am Jen Potter, and I am the host of Networking Now, and I am joined with Rob Rains. We have been talking about so many different things about networking and business and the two different businesses that he has, how different they are, but yet how the same they really are. And before the break, we were talking about collaboration over competition, working with people that are just like us in order to get our business to thrive. And, I had to put all these fun words together, but powerful collaboration can be with relationship building. And if we are able to relationship build and collaborate with other people, we're going to continue to grow our businesses, and we're going to really exceed our expectations because we're making things more profitable. And so as we were going into our different types of businesses and the different things that we were working on, we also talked about networking and also marketing. So crossing the two of them, networking and marketing, you have two completely different businesses. Could you tell me a little bit about, you were able to bring both of your businesses together and say, I can network and talk about either or business depending on who I'm talking to. Can you do the same on social media? Are you just as, successful in each social media platform, or do you go one for one and one for the other?
It's hard to be successful at two very differing businesses on the same social media platform. And in a place like LinkedIn, where it doesn't really work to have two separate LinkedIn profiles, I find that I kind of need to do, so Certissima, the IT business, I really promote that on LinkedIn. And then my coaching business, relationship coaching, I promote that more on Facebook and in private groups. For example, I have a Facebook group. So this harks back to when I created the group for middle-aged singles. I did a break-off group for just men, and I would send surveys to the women in the group and ask them to voluntarily fill out a survey, an anonymous survey, and then and they would know that I was sharing the answers with men, and I would take those anonymous answers and I'd share them with the men in my break-off in my private group. And so I created that group. And so even though I left the singles group when I married, I've still got this private group, men's only group. And most of the men in it are single at this time. And so I'm able to offer coaching in there. The group is called Towers of Strength. It's on Facebook. And that's a source of coaching. And there are some other groups that I do as well. So Facebook is a lot better for me for coaching. LinkedIn a lot better for the IT business.
I think that's really interesting. And because, being in the group section of Facebook as a person who is a coach myself, I find it to be almost overwhelming. So when you're, looking for groups to advertise or to talk in, what kind of strategies do you have when you're looking to be a part of those groups? Because inevitably being in a group is also networking. So how do you find the ones that best fit what you're looking for?
So when I'm looking for a group to be a member of, so in the Towers of Strength example, I'm the leader of the group, right? I started that. But if I'm looking for a group to be a member of, what I'll do is just, if it's interesting to me, if it seems to correlate by its name and description, if it correlates with what I do, I'll join the group and I'll kind of sit. I don't want to say lurker, but I want to sit and I'll comment very little. I'll comment here and there. But what I want to do is get a sense of how people talk to each other and how people post. And if their posts are genuinely about helping somebody else, then there's a pretty good resonance. And then I jump in and post more often, and not only post, but comment on others' posts and lift and try and help. If most of the posts are about advertising themselves, then it's probably not a group that's going to be helpful to me, or at least not resonate with my ideals. And so I usually will bow out of that group.
That's actually a really good tip, because I find that, as I've been trying to get a little bit more into the groups, because like I said, I was kind of overwhelmed by all of them and trying to find, the ones that fit. So I do join some, and then sometimes we don't always get notifications. So trying to turn them on, not be overwhelmed by all of them. So it is really hard to find the ones that really work. But when you do, I would just naturally guess that you're probably getting some clients from these groups. Is that correct?
Yes. And the interesting thing, and this works through both on Facebook with coaching and on LinkedIn with IT. If I go and create a post, so I walked into LinkedIn with the assumption that if I post, people will, seek my business, right? They'll want to do business this with me. That is simply not the case. I have not found that to be the case. When I post, people are like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of engagement, some comments here and there. Um, but when I comment on other people's posts, and I do it in a sincere way, not in a self-promotional way, but when I do it authentically and often share something heartfelt, I get a lot more views from that. More people will jump in and go, who is this guy that just said that? That resonates with me. I think that too. And then and they care about the person who with the original post, they care about that person. And I say something nice about that person. And so they're like, oh, all right, I like this guy because he likes the same person that I like. And again, I'm not being inauthentic. I genuinely care about that person. And so they jump in and they're like, all right, who's this Rob guy? And then they'll go look at my profile and then they'll look at my company. And my company gets more views off of that than it ever did off of any original post that Certissima does. But
And so do you post as yourself when you go on LinkedIn, or do you post as Certissima?
I typically post as Certissima. I very rarely post as myself. I comment on others' posts as myself.
Okay. That's really good to know, because I'm trying to always get some new tips and tricks when it comes to LinkedIn, because I feel like I don't do as much work in LinkedIn as I know I should. And every time I get on here and a guest is like, this is where I go. And I just ask myself, I'm like, why don't I utilize these platforms the way that they're meant to be utilized? And it's almost like ignorance is bliss. I'm like, if I don't know how to do it, then I don't have to do it. But I feel like in order to continue to grow and to find the clients and find the people that I really want to connect with, it's always LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm in meetings, like I'm always looking at LinkedIn. When I want to know about somebody and their business and their credibility, it's always LinkedIn. And so like I always give the suggestion of, you need to go in LinkedIn, and then I remind myself, like, this is always my reminder. Okay, it's Tuesday, get into LinkedIn and make a habit of it. And I find that the more that I get myself there as business, I feel like that's where my people really are, especially for the coach, for me, for coaching, because a lot of my coaching is business.
Mhm.
But I'm really interested in learning how to kind of get more into the Facebook groups. So suggestions for getting into Facebook groups. Wow, mouthful, couldn't even say it. How What do you suggest? So I look for things like keywords and phrases for what I'm looking for. Is that what you would suggest, and try to
Abs-
just find groups that fit?
Absolutely. So if, for example, if you're your ideal client, then describe yourself in a few words in the group finder, and you'll find some groups. Or if you know your ideal client, you have that avatar really tightly defined, go in and throw some of those words in, and you'll often, in my experience, find something. So, when I was creating a group for mid singles, these happen to be mid singles of a particular religion. I just put in the name of the religion, singles, and like an age range in the name, and I found a few groups that I could join, and then I created one that differed from them in name a little bit, and like I said, grew it to 2,800 without poaching from the other groups, and that was a lot of fun.
And I found that really to be really cool. And, so we talked about like the Facebook groups. How about, something else I'm interested in is LinkedIn groups. Do you utilize those at all? Because I know that those have been trending a little bit, but I also feel like it's an area that I haven't really, put my feet into yet.
I'm a member of maybe two or three, and I honestly don't use them very much at all. I really enjoy reading posts from people that, not from a group, but from individuals, and then commenting on those posts. And that tends to be the most engaging way to connect with people.
Because it's showing that authenticity, right? And that was something that I know you said was really important prior to. And, one of the things that we were talking about prior to or after the commercial break, we were talking a little bit about some tips and tricks that you had. And you told me something that I thought was really amazing. It did connect with me on a personal level, but I'd love for you to talk about, something that you suggested that you learned from Chris Voss. And who's Chris Voss?
Sure. So Chris Voss is or possibly still is a professional hostage negotiator. He worked with the FBI. It was just it worked internationally. Very, very talented, incredible hostage negotiator. And he wrote a book called Never Split the Difference, which is how I heard of him. And I've been reading the book recently and took some of the tips and tricks that he shared and put one very, immediately today into practice. I've tried it a few times, but really had some success today. And that is that when we are seeking to further a relationship, whether business or otherwise, we kind of try and push people, almost corner them into a yes. And we're scared of, we have this deep fear of someone saying no about whatever it is we're talking about. That is the most frequent. That's the reason why people always say, I hate sales. They're afraid of the no. And he actually said, getting people to, cornering them into a yes, you're always going to get a fake yes. It's the worst thing in the world. They're going to say that to get you out the door. They're going to say that to shut you up, but it's insincere. The final yes is important, but that's where, with ink on the paper and a check in your hand. But
right.
But long before that yes, you actually want to push them to no, because when they say yes, they feel like they're giving something up. Right. They feel like they're losing. There's this energy of loss. But when they say no, there's an energy of empowerment. They feel autonomous. I am in charge. I'm in control, and I can veto this guy anytime. And so I actually, early in the conversation, try and get them to say no. The example today is we were in a meeting with a client. Our team had been trying to get them to accept a certain date as a cutoff date in a project, and they'd been dragging their feet. And understandably, they had some fears. And I got them quickly to say no. I immediately suggested a date that was sooner than I knew that they were comfortable with, and also sooner than the one we wanted. And they said, no, we're not comfortable with that. And I said, okay, that's fine. No problem. Would you be comfortable with this over here? And they're like, no. I said, okay, great. I did that intentionally because after they shared why, that they were uncomfortable, I said, would you mind telling me why? Can we talk into this? And they began to go into why they were uncomfortable. And they actually opened up and shared something they hadn't shared in previous calls. And I was able to use that fear to say, okay, if we address this fear in this special way, would you feel more comfortable? And they're like, oh, yeah, I think we would. Okay, well, we commit to do that, and we'll do these other things. And by the end of the call, they had not only committed to a date, but it was only one day after the date that my team had set as the goal. And we were like, well, that works. We can work with that. And
you're like, I learned this today.
Yeah, just simply get them to say no a few times, and they feel in control, and then they open up much better. It was a lot of fun.
I think that's so awesome. And, I was getting so excited when we talked about it in between the commercial break. And I'm like, we have to talk about this again because, that book is a really awesome book. I definitely need to read it again. And, just those small reminders, those small, we're always looking for the heartstrings. Even when we're networking, we're trying to get people to give us a referral. Well, if we're not trying to sell them, but we're trying to get more information out of them, I definitely feel like, as soon as you said it, I felt like it calmed me down, because I'm like, when somebody's trying to sell me, I'm the salesperson. Nobody sells me, right? So it made me instantly go, oh, I like that. So that's a really awesome tip. So thank you so much for sharing that. And before we run out of time, I would love for you to tell everyone again the names of your business, the names of your podcast, and the groups that you're in, and how everybody can get a hold of you. And if worse comes to worse and they can't figure out how to find you, they can reach out to me directly, so I can connect you. So
you bet. For IT managed services, my company is Certissima Technologies. And for relationship and life coaching, my company is Powerful Identity Coaching. And both powerfulidentity.com and certissima.com are websites, and they have contact information for me. Rob at certissima.com and Rob at powerfulidentity.com are both are emails that will both reach me. And then you asked about podcasts. The podcast that I co-host with Heidi McLean is Awake and Arise, and it's specifically a relationship podcast for Christian men.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. It's been a pleasure having you on and talking about all of the things. And, as long as I've known you, I got to learn a lot of new, interesting things about you today. So thank you so much. My name is Jen Potter. I am the host of Networking Now. Today, I was joined by Rob Rains of Certissima Technology and Powerful Identity. And so if you're looking to get a hold of him, or you have some IT questions or personal relationship questions, he is the person for you. Have a great day. And thank you so much for joining us.
This has been a Now Media Networks feature presentation. All rights reserved.